Hungarian folk tales. Stone soup. Once upon a time, a poor young soldier was coming home from the war. The poor soul wandered from one village to another, threadbare and hungry. He was offered no bread or even a little hot soup, anywhere at all. He went from house to house asking for something to eat. But the people either set the dogs on him or told him they themselves were too poor to eat. As he carried on from gate to gate, he made up his mind to go into the first house and make a pot of soup for himself, whoever the owner of the house might be. He picked up a stone at the entrance of a house and walked in. The owner was an old woman. "Good morning, old lady." "Good morning to you, young soldier." "Are you well today, old lady?" "I am well. And how are you, young soldier?" "I'm also well. But I have to say that I would love to eat a little soup, if you have any to spare." "Oh, young soldier, I'd gladly give you some if I had any, but I'm as poor as a church mouse. I have nothing. My pantry, my attic, and my whole house are all empty. I have nothing, not even a crust of bread." "Well," said the soldier, "I'm not so poor. I have a stone right here in my pocket. I could make a soup out of it. All I need is a pot or a pan or something to cook it in." "Well, I could give you one. I have plenty of pots in the house," said the old woman, "but I have nothing to put in them." The soldier washed the stone nice and neatly and placed it in the pot. The old woman lit the fire. The soldier poured water over the stone and placed it on the fire to cook. He even stirred it with a long wooden spoon. The old woman watched him with curiosity. The soldier even tried the soup. "Well, it's good enough," he said, "but if it had a little salt in it, it would be even better." "I'll get you some salt. I have plenty." The soldier put the salt into it, stirred it, and said, "If you had a spoonful of fat, that would make it even better." The old woman said, "I do have some. I'll bring it right away." She brought a spoonful of fat and they put it in the pot. The soldier stirred it and tried it while the old woman watched his every move. The soldier said, "Well, you know, I'm used to making stone soup, but I usually make it with a piece of sausage. That gives it a better flavour." "Oh, I have some sausage," said the old woman. "I'll give you some from the pantry." Then the soldier said, "Bring 2 pieces, so then you'll have one and I'll have one too." "Very well, I shall bring 2." And the old woman brought 2 pieces of sausage. The soldier put them both in the pot, then stirred it and tried it. "Do you know," he said, "if you have some potatoes, we could cut some up and put them in here too. And if you have some vegetables, that would really top it all." "Oh, but I do have some," said the old woman, "and I'll bring them at once." So she hurried off right away, pulled up some potatoes and vegetables, which they cleaned and cut into pieces and put into the soup. Then the soldier stirred it, tasted it, and said to the old woman, "You should try it too. It's really good." The old woman tried the soup and said, "Well, I would have never have believed that you could make such a good soup from a stone." They left it to cook a while, then the soldier said, "A little rice would improve it, but I'm not sure you have any." "Oh, but I do have some rice." Then they put some rice into the soup too. "Now it's just like the soups I usually make." Then they waited for the soup to be ready, and the soldier served the old woman and himself a bowlful each, and they both began to eat. The old woman couldn't help wondering how such a good soup like this had been made out of a stone. When they had had enough to eat, the old woman said to the soldier, "Tell me, young soldier, would you sell me this stone? Quite often I have nothing to cook, but with this stone I would always have at least a little soup." "Well, why not? It's yours for 100 florins." The old woman quickly gave him the 100 florins and wrapped the stone from the soup in a cloth, so she could use it again to make soup whenever she wanted. Then the young soldier left with the 100 florins before the old woman could change her mind. So he had satisfied his hunger, and he had 100 florins for his troubles. He walked cheerfully on till nightfall, when he met another old woman who had no idea how to make good soup out of a stone either. He played his trick again and had a good meal on top of it. And I don't know what kind of soup the old woman made after that, as I was told this story by an old aunt of mine. But I suppose they tried it when they were poor back in the old country. But whatever the case, they all lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folktales. Dan the Dancer. The king mourned his beautiful wife for a year and a day. When his mourning was over, he had it announced all over the land that he would marry any maiden who could spin yarn of gold. One old woman heard this news and rushed home to her house to tell her ugly daughter. "Well, my dear, could you spin yarn of gold out of string?" Her daughter set about thinking and soon set her heart on becoming queen. Once, when her mother was away in the village, she shut all the doors, covered all the windows so as not to be seen by anybody, and began to spin yarn. She kept on at it for quite some time, but there was no way she could make yarn of gold out of old string. "Oh, I can't go on like this. If someone taught me how to spin yarn of gold, I'd give him my body and my soul, even if he was the devil himself." "Here I am, sweetheart. What do you wish?" The girl told him what, and asked him to teach her how to spin yarn of gold out of simple string. She said she'd give him anything he asked. "I'll teach you if you give me your body and your soul in a year from now." The girl agreed. "Sit here on this stool with your back to the door like me, you see, then say 3 times, 'Devla, devla disako.'" Then the devil began to spin yarn and, believe it or not, yarn of gold came spinning off the spinning wheel. Then the girl too sat down on the little stool with her back to the door and repeated 3 times, "Devla, devla disako." Then she set about spinning and, miracle of miracles, yarn of gold began to spin off the spinning wheel onto the spindle in her hand. "Well, my dear, I'll leave you now, but I'll be back when the year has passed. Do you understand our bargain?" I do, but before you go, please tell me your name." "I won't do that, but if you can guess, I won't take you away when the year's over." Then the girl carried on spinning until the candles had to be lit. And then her mother came home. "Goodness, my dear, is what I see true? Can you really make yarn of gold out of old string?" "Yes, I can, Mother. Hurry right away and tell the king the news." The king found it very hard to believe. "Well, your majesty, I swear upon my life it's true. Come and see for yourself." So the king set off to see for himself with 6 ministers, counts, barons, and generals. Not even the old oven had ever seen so many lords of the land gather together before. It stood there gaping with its mouth so wide that it was unable to shut it ever again. Then the king and his lords all sat down and watched how the ugly girl spun yarn of gold out of string. The king was worried that he would have to wed such an ugly girl. But what else could he do? He sent a carriage drawn by 4 horses to fetch the girl, summoned a priest, and married her right away. The king slowly became accustomed to his new wife's looks and soon he no longer saw her as ugly. They lived like this for quite some time, but as the days passed, the poor girl turned queen became sadder and sadder. What will become of me when the year is over? Both the king and the courtiers tried to cheer the queen up, but in vain. Then one day the king went out hunting with his men. He ordered his men to go right up to the top of the hill and set up camp under the largest tree. "We have a problem, Your Majesty. We can't set up camp under the largest tree because a small man shaped like a monster has made a fire there. Maybe we shouldn't go there at all." "On the contrary, we'll go and see who it is, even if it's the devil himself." And they reached the top of the hill, and there they saw a fire, and around the fire a tiny man dancing around a huge pot with an enormous wooden spoon. "Burn fire, burn flame, in this pot is what I make, a beautiful bride I will take, and Dan the dancer is no fake." As the king caught sight of him, he burst out laughing and went straight home to tell his wife so that she could have a good laugh too. And that's just what happened. The queen laughed so much that it seemed as though she had no worries in the world. Time went slowly by, and the year she had bargained would soon be reached at noon that day. On the strike of 12, just as the king and queen were about to eat a delicious bowl of soup, there was a knocking on the door. The queen could guess who it was. "Who is it?" "It's me, sweetheart, the one who taught you how to spin yarn of gold out of string. The year's up and I've come to take you away. If you can say who I am, you can stay." "You mean your name?" "It's Dan the dancer. And to hell with you." Upon this, the little man burst with rage and slammed against the door, and all that was left of him was a big blob of tar. Then the king asked his wife how she knew who the man was. In her great fright, she told him all that had happened. "Well, my love, if you can still spin yarn of gold out of old string after this, you can stay. But if you can't, you must leave here and never return." So the woman sat down and said, "Devla, devla disako," and she began to spin. But it was no use. No yarn of gold would come off the spinning wheel. The woman had a fit, and in her rage, she flew against the door. There she turned into tar just like the devil. All the shoemakers and bootmakers went there from then on whenever they needed tar. And if I'm not mistaken, they go there still. Hungarian folk tales. The Prince Who Wanted to Live Forever. Once upon a time there was a prince. He told his father that he did not want to die. "You should know, son, that he who is born will also die." But the prince insisted that he did not want to die. "I'll go to Foreverland." "There's no such place, my son." "Yes, there is. I've heard of it." "Very well then, go." The prince prepared himself and wandered for many years until he came to a high mountain. He regarded the mountain and saw something at its very peak. It looked as small as a sparrow. Well, if he had come all this way, he simply had to find out what it was. It took him years to scale the mighty mountain. There he found a huge giant. He greeted the giant, and the giant returned his greeting. "What are you doing here, Prince?" I'm looking for Foreverland. Could you tell me which way to go? Of course, you've arrived. Stay here with me because the Queen of Foreverland will send you here anyway. I'd like to talk to the Queen myself. Please tell me which way to go from here. There's a large forest over there. If you cross it, you'll find her. The prince went off to find the forest. There he came upon a magnificent palace. And there he found a kindly woman sewing in one of the rooms. What are you looking for, Prince? The Queen, of course. Well, don't go any further, because she will send you here anyway. Stay with me, and we can talk. But I wish to talk to the Queen herself. You cannot get in to see her, because you have to go through 3 iron gates, and each is guarded by 3 wild beasts. But if you don't want to stay here, I'll give you 3 bread buns. Should the animals attack you at the gates, give them a bun, and the iron gates will open. And so it all happened. When the 3rd iron gate opened up, the prince saw the Queen was standing in the middle of a courtyard. She asked the prince what had brought him to her palace. I've come looking for you. Then stay here with me. And the prince stayed. Time went by, and one day the prince said to the Queen, "Listen, I'd like to go home. I left my old parents behind, and I'd like to see how they are." The Queen laughed. "Being a prince has not made you any wiser. How many years do you think you've been here? 3 years? You've been here for 3,000 years, but I won't keep you from going if you really want to. I'll give you a pair of shoes. Take them with you. A man will attack you. Tell him you'll go with him and then put on these shoes." So the prince set off, and he wandered and wandered until he reached a town. But the town was no longer the same as it had been. He asked a few people if they knew the king by such and such a name. No, nobody knew him. He asked the oldest looking man who was the oldest man in town. The man showed him the house where a 300-year-old man lived. The prince went to see him. "Do you remember my father, old man?" "Oh, my son, I've never even heard of him." As night fell, the prince found himself a room, made himself a bed out of hay, and went to sleep. In the morning, he woke up with a man standing right in front of him. "Hail, Prince! I've been looking for you for 3,000 years, and now I've found you. Come with me, because you ought to have died a long time ago." "Wait a minute, let me put on these shoes. Let's go out, and then I'll go with you." When the prince put on the shoes, they whizzed him away at once. Death rushed after him everywhere but failed to catch the prince. When the prince reached the walls of the Queen's palace, the Queen of Foreverland was standing there in the courtyard. She shouted to Death, "Don't you touch that man. I'll go out and take care of him. I'll throw him up high, and if he falls outside the walls, he'll be yours. But if he falls within the walls, he'll be mine." When the king threw the prince up high, Death danced and clapped, thinking that he was going to fall outside. But as it happened, he landed within the walls. The Queen then chased Death away, telling him never to return to her land again, otherwise he would surely die himself. So the prince stayed with the Queen, and they both lived happily ever after. Hungarian folk tales. The Soldier's Luck. Once upon a time, there lived a soldier. The soldier was returning home on leave from the army and passing through the forest when an old witch appeared and blocked his path. "Would you like to have wealth and riches, young man?" "Of course, for I do not have a penny to my name." "Then listen to me. You must go to the hollow tree and summon up all the money you desire. But you can only make money magically appear if you grant me one wish." "Just tell me what you wish, old lady." "There are 3 barrels of coins down there, but each is guarded by a fearsome hound. I shall give you an apron, and once you get down there, you must spread it on the ground and place the dogs on it. When you have collected all the money you want, you will look for a box on the table and you must bring that box to me. Now I shall tie this rope around your waist and lower you down, and when your task is complete, I shall pull you back again." The soldier looked at the coins in the first barrel, but they were all copper. "I don't want these," he said, set the dog back on the pile and carried on. The second barrel contained silver coins. He said, "I don't want these either." The third barrel was filled with gold coins, so he placed the dog on the apron and filled all his pockets with gold. Then he picked up the magic box from the table and called to the old witch to hoist him back up. "So tell me, witch, why do you want this little box?" But the old witch could not tell him, so he slit her throat with his silver sword. Then the soldier went on his way. Soon he reached a town where he bought himself good food and new clothes. Then he hired a coach and rode through the town. And as he rode, he showered the townspeople with money. He gave money willingly because he knew what it was to be poor. Then he rented a room at the local inn where he made merry every night. But the day eventually came when he ran out of money and had neither bread nor candles. Then he recalled that the little box from inside the hollow tree had a candle in it. The soldier lit the candle and the first fearsome dog appeared. "What is your wish, master?" "I've run out of money. I have neither bread nor anything else." Then the dog hurried off and soon returned with a bag brimming full of money for its master. The young soldier soon received news that there was a young princess living in the town, but that no one was allowed to visit her in person. The soldier soon set his heart on seeing her. So he lit the candle, and the dog appeared. "What is your wish, master?" "I hear there is a princess whom no one is allowed to see." "How could I possibly see what she's like?" "She's said to be very beautiful indeed." Then the dog went off without saying a word and soon returned with the princess. The royal maid went to the princess's room in the palace and discovered that she was gone. As soon as she realized, she began to scream. Everybody asked, "Where can she have gone? Where can she have gone?" The king said, "If she comes back, a maid should sit by the side of her bed and watch over her at night and see which way she goes should she leave." So when the princess was back in her room, a maid sat by the side of her bed. The next night, when the dog took her away, the maid ran after them but failed to note the number of the house and so didn't know where the dog had taken her. "I know what to do," the king said. So he filled a bag with flour, cut the corner off the bag, and tied it to the princess's waist. So wherever the dog took her, the flour trail betrayed them. The next day, soldiers followed the flour trail and it led them directly to the young soldier. The king was furious and sentenced the young soldier to death for what he had done. All the people of the town gathered to see the execution. Then a young boy happened to pass right in front of the soldier's prison cell window, and the soldier said to him, "Where are you going, young lad? I'm going to see the execution of some soldier." "Go no further. I'm that soldier. Go back quickly." He told the lad where exactly. "And bring me the box you'll find on the table." The young boy went off, brought the box, and passed it to him. So when he was led to the gallows, the soldier told the hangman that he had one last wish. The king allowed the soldier to smoke a pipe. Then the soldier lit the candle in the box 3 times, and all 3 dogs appeared. "What is your wish, master?" "What's my wish? Can you not see I am about to be hanged?" So then the 3 dogs set upon the crowd, but they were careful not to harm the pretty princess. Then the soldier married the princess, and they both lived happily ever after. Hungarian folk tales. The Witch. Once upon a time, there lived an old man who had 3 sons. When all 3 were fully grown, they decided to marry and told their father of their wish. "Very well, but one at a time. I want you all to take a walk, and the one who returns with the prettiest flowers will be the first to marry." The 2 elder brothers did not even leave the village. Both of them had a sweetheart, so each of them brought a nice bunch of flowers back to their father. The youngest son, however, had no sweetheart, so he went out of the town to look for flowers. He walked and he walked until he eventually came to a vast forest, in the middle of which he came across an old palace surrounded by a flower garden. "Oh, if only I could pick flowers in this beautiful garden." The youngest son was still standing there when a witch appeared in the garden and asked him, "Why are you so sad, my child?" Then the young man told her what his problem was. "If all you need are flowers, come with me and I shall give you some." Then she took him into the garden and picked a bunch of beautiful flowers. As soon as the poor man caught sight of the flowers, he said to his eldest sons, "Well, sons, it will be your younger brother who will marry first, because he has returned with the best blossoms." But the elder brothers complained to their father so bitterly that he eventually agreed to set a second test. "Very well, the second test shall be he who brings back the prettiest kerchief shall be the one to marry first." So the sons went off, the 2 elder ones to their sweethearts in the village, and the youngest one to the witch in the forest. "What do you need this time, my child?" The youngest son told her, and so the old witch went back into the palace and brought the young man a beautiful gold-trimmed kerchief that bedazzled the boy. The 2 elder brothers also brought a kerchief each, but the youngest son's was by far the loveliest of the lot. The elder brothers were very upset, and so their father eventually agreed to set a 3rd test. "Very well, go and bring me your sweethearts. He who brings me the loveliest girl shall be the one to marry first." This was easy for the 2 elder brothers, because they both had sweethearts in the village. But where, oh where, should the youngest brother look for a bride? Who could he take to his father? Should he fetch the old witch who had given him the flowers and the kerchief? So the youngest son set off with his head hung low. He walked into the forest, stopped in front of the palace, and leaned against the fence with a face as sad as the autumn rain. "What's the matter with you, my child?" "Oh, don't even ask me what the matter is. My father told us that the son who took the prettiest sweetheart home would be the first to marry." "Don't hang your head, my child, but come with me to the palace. Here's a fireplace, make a fire. With every flame that flickers up, a witch will appear before your eyes. Fear not and stand bravely there until you see the last and ugliest witch of all that will have a bunch of keys between her teeth. Then you need to snatch the keys, otherwise the rest of the witches will tear you apart. And now the rest is up to you. Saying nothing more, the old witch vanished. The young man made a fire in the fireplace, and as the flames began to grow and crackle, a witch emerged from the flames. The youngest son was so afraid that a shiver of fright ran down his spine. Then a second flame leapt forth, producing a second witch. Then many more witches followed this one. Eventually, the last witch appeared with a bunch of keys between her teeth. The youngest son gathered all his courage and snatched the keys, and, wonder of wonders, the ugly witch turned into a beautiful princess. The youngest son was too surprised to speak. All the witches then vanished from the room and were replaced by a throng of graceful maidens. Then the pretty princess said, "You must be very surprised. I'll have you know that I was the old witch who gave you the flowers and the kerchief. You must have been sent here by God, because I was a princess and a spell was cast on me. Had you not appeared, I would have remained an old witch, and now we shall be together for the rest of our natural days." The poor man was in good spirits and said, "Very well, I will let my elder sons marry too." And that they did, and their younger brother gave them each a house with plenty of land. Then the youngest and most fortunate son took his bride back to the palace, where they lived happily ever after.